This episode of Bob and Rose contains some references to James Bond, which is very exciting because I have heard that, there are rumours about the next James Bond supposedly coming out next year. How are they going to reboot the series? What are they going to do after Craig has left? There were rumours of Henry Cavill. There was even this trailer made, but turned out to be an AI deepfake, which we hate to see. But on this podcast, we're going to do a good old-fashioned parody. We're going to try and make one of the James Bond movies sound a bit more smutty, and we're going to sort of act out a little scene from it, and do a bit of fun word replacement to make it more suggestive. And the movie we've selected is Goldfinger. How are we supposed to pick a smuttier title than that? Oh well, no worries. Let's look at the characters. Okay, so you've got James Bond, obviously. I don't know, James Bondage. That could be the name. Yeah. The Bond girl in this movie is called Pussy Galore. What's the parody? What are we what is serious about that we can make silly? Come on, Zach, stop staring at me. I need your help here. No worries. Let's move on. Okay, so the evil henchman, say it's a Korean guy named Oddjob. I feel like if we tried to do a parody of that, it would just be even more racist. Should we just get on to the episode?
Yes. So I didn't know I was existing in this opening bit. If you'd have given me more time, I would have come up with Pussy Glory Hole.
Okay, now let's get into the theme tune. Pussy glory hole. Doesn't really work with pussies though.
No, but if you suppose that a glory hole is a stand-in,
if you put a bit of wet toilet paper around the edges, then
this is not. Hello
and welcome back to Davis on Davis, the podcast all about the TV of Russell T Davies. This is episode 4 of Bob and Rose. Just off the bat, I think this is the most quotable episode yet. Mm-hmm. There are so many lines from this that I picked out and put in my notes, so I'll be happy to end up just reading a transcript of the TV episode. We'll do more than that, but I'm saying this is a very quotable episode. Anyway, before we get into that, how are you doing, Zach?
I'm really very well. I loved this episode, and I think this episode has got the best end hook, so I am really excited to discuss it. Generally, I'm also very well. I have a fun fact for the audience. And I've just realised I've done it again. I've said fun fact, and what I mean is I'm going to tell you an anecdote about my life. You will recall, long-time listeners of the show, that when we were discussing Queer as Folk, I was the local knowledge, although I'd never been out to Canal Street for a nice gay night out. Since the last episode, I have been out on Canal Street for a night out.
Wow, proper.
Whoa!
You've finally done it.
I've finally gone and done the research.
You've finally been on the ground.
And do you know what I did? You know what I did? This is the funny bit. I went to the pub with some mates, and they were going to an evening of short plays by students of the University of Manchester Drama Society. So I said, I'll come along. So I went along, and I just thought it would be in the Manchester Uni Student Union, because that's where they have their theatre space. No, it was in the basement of one of the clubs on Canal Street. So there I am. I go into a club, go into the basement, watch 2 hours of short theatre, and then come back out. This was on a Sunday night, mind you, to a half-empty gay club. Then my friend wants to smoke, so we go outside. She's actually vaping, not smoking, so she's not allowed in the smoking area, so we just have to stand on Canal Street, a pretty empty Canal Street, and just talk to a drag queen for half an hour. So that was my Canal Street experience, everyone.
Wow, amazing.
Ooh. I kept every 5 seconds going, this is my Queer as Folk moment, this is my Queer as Folk moment. Didn't quite feel like Queer as Folk. Although we did eat chips in the exact place where Bob and Rose eat chips in episode 2 of Bob and Rose.
Wow, did you shunt everyone into the area just so you could say you did it, or did it just happen?
Well, I'm going to tell you, there wasn't really anybody there in the area because it was a Sunday night. I just sort of ended up stood in the spot looking at a pretty empty Canal Street. Anyway, how are you, Louis?
I'm good. Yeah. So we didn't record the last episode long ago, so I haven't done much then. So I guess instead I'll say what I will have done by the time this episode goes out. I will have ridden the Wuppertal Schwebebahn, which, to any transport nerds, is a big deal. Have you heard of this system, Zach?
No, I know nothing about transport.
So it is a train, except it runs on one rail. So it's a monorail. That's not the one rail is above the train. It's suspended from that rail. It hangs down as it travels across the city.
Whoa.
It was built in 1901, and yet it looks like futuristic.
I was going to say you lost me at monorail because that's more of a Shelbyville idea. Sorry, no, that does sound good.
Well, here's the thing. So there is actually this concept called the gadget barn, which is the idea of a transport system, which is some like idea that's a bit of a gimmick and is supposed to like sound more attractive than just a normal train, but ends up being like more expensive to maintain, has a lower capacity than a train, and what? So that your carriages can run on a concrete guideway instead of steel rails. What is that even about? And I think generally, yeah, gadget barns are dumb unless they look cool. And if your train is hanging from a guideway above, okay, that is sufficiently cool. Nothing else is sufficiently cool. So the systems in Germany, the systems in Japan, the recent system in China, those are gadget barns, but I'll allow it because they look amazing. I must mention quickly, France is like the best country for making up gadget barns. That's all I have to say.
So this is in Germany, right? Because I was going to say, do you get that in the Deutschland ticket for €49 a month?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Whoa. Because that concept to me is crazy.
Or maybe that's just DB, that's just Deutsche Bahn. I don't know how it works for like local transport like trams and metros.
Oh, gosh.
But there is a ticket for the North Rhine-Westphalia area where Wuppertal is, as is Cologne, as is Düsseldorf, as is Dortmund. And I will have to look for like what's the best sort of ticket to get for my travels around that area. Mm-hmm. But that does cover all the like local transport. So
because once you've tasted transport outside of the UK, I think you can never go back.
I know, right? I went like last year. I went to the Netherlands. I went to Amsterdam. Our flight home was delayed, so I got monetary compensation and had an extra day in that country. Amazing win-win. And I rode the trains a bit on that final day.
Monetary compensation. I got compensated 76 quid last week because a 45-minute train of mine was delayed by 2 hours. That was a lot of money I got back that I wasn't expecting. Anyway, I feel like this is turning into a transport podcast.
No. Shout your compensations from the rooftops. I love hearing that stuff.
This is in fact a teaser for our transport compensation podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna be the new like money saving expert, but for trains. We're coming for you, the man in seat 61. Anyway, we've heard your thing, we've heard my thing. Let's get to the episode.
Yes, I'm going to say, speaking of trains, let's talk about Bob and Rose.
This episode doesn't have any.
No. But wouldn't it be so much better for it?
But it does have buses.
Oh, I knew there was a link. But
we'll get to that. Off the bat, I think my first note is Donna is now Janet, because we hear her introduced and I caught her name. So we were wondering what's her name now. The actor who played Donna in Queer as Folk, in Bob and Rose, she plays Janet. Which,
as I sort of alluded to last time, means that this absolutely canonically cannot take place in the same place, the same universe as Queer as Folk, unless, of course, you can think of some complex theory where she's actually Donna's cousin.
Yes.
It worked for Three Married Men in Doctor Who, so why can't it work for...
Yes, there can be identical cousins.
Anyway, Louis, you've jumped straight into, halfway through the episode. Well, not halfway through the episode.
Well, no, I jumped into, the first scene, Bob and Rose go to a pub
yes.
to meet her girlfriend. So this is the thing, is the episode starts out with Bob and Rose. They're getting ready. Bob dances a bit as he kind of undresses a bit for Rose, and they make out, but they're not about to have sex, they're actually about to go out.
No, but there's a sexual energy between them. They're having a great time, they're a great couple.
No, yes, they're firmly together. And they go out, and Rose introduces Bob to her girlfriends, Janet, Anita, and Marina from her office. That seems to be mainly where her friends exist, is at her workplace.
Even though she describes them as a creepy, evil den of bitches. Sorry, no, an evil den of bitches. The creepy isn't something else.
Yes. They're not creepy in the sort of obvious sense, But immediately Marina tells Bob what drink she wants, and then he goes off to get them, and Rose is like, oh, I'll help you. And then she's like, no, Rose, you don't need to help him. Before even like meeting them, she's like, we need to just split them up for a minute so that we can chat to Rose on our own.
And the interesting thing that I noticed is they discuss how, well, isn't it nice that you're dating a teacher? Oh, I bet he's got a wonderful salary. And it turns out that Bob's salary is 23 grand a year. And they're like, not 23 grand. Oh my God, not 23 grand. And it's another reminder of massive inflation in this country over the last 20 years.
No, yeah, I mean, that is ridiculous. You know, like I'm trying to get some entry level positions, and those are more than a couple grand over 23. Like that's pretty ridiculous.
But it's interesting seeing Bob exist in a straight pub, because we see Rose trying to coach Bob how to not act straight, but how to act well among her friends, but not too gay. Because she's like, smile. Most men don't smile, but don't smile too much because that's creepy. Almost like Bob has never interacted with a gaggle of straight women in this role before, which he hasn't.
No, yeah, and when Bob is like talking about how Rose leaves her stuff lying around is a bit messy, and then she's like, yeah, and Bob is so neat, but not too neat, just like a little above average neat, you know. Because if he's too neat, obviously, as we know from the Seinfeld episode, that would mean he's gay.
Is that a correct stereotype?
I don't know. I mean,
he isn't.
Maybe it's more about what straight men are like, you know?
Well, I suppose this was the thing, when I was at uni, a lot of the straight men that I would know, they would not decorate their bedrooms at all. It would just be like, here's a single block colour duvet on my bed, and then none of the walls or none of the pinboard would be completely empty, versus my room had posters everywhere, and every female friend that I had, oh my God, they had wonderful stuff.
Yeah, not even a strip of gamer lights.
No, exactly. Janet brings along Mike. It's a real girls displaying men evening, and we find out that this new man of hers, Mike, was the man wearing a rabbit costume in the club at the end of last episode. So I'm glad that he was one of the details that we brought up yesterday, because he turns out to be a little bit of a detail today as well.
Yes, it's Mike. It's Mike, a hunk of sexy hunk magic. Bob and Rose both check him out. And this concerns Rose a bit, because, you know, I know Bob doesn't describe himself as bisexual, but this is maybe a bit of her sort of unresolved biphobia. The idea that sort of, if you're with someone bisexual, this idea that, well, now they're going to sort of look at everyone instead of looking at half a population like you'd expect a non-bisexual person to do. And so she's sort of feeling that, and Bob's response is, well, you also looked.
Yeah, exactly. And it leads to this really sweet moment where Bob says to Rose, you're the only woman that I only look at you. She's tough. That's the height of romance.
Yeah.
For Rose.
Have you seen Feel Good?
No, I can't say I have.
So it's Mae Martin playing themselves.
Oh, I'm aware.
Charlotte Ritchie plays George, and George says that, like, because in the show she's identifying as a woman, she says, like, you're the only woman I kind of look at, and Mae Martin turns that into a bit in a comedy set where she's like, so you're not looking at any others. Am I even a woman at this point, you know? It's sort of interesting that here it's sort of a point of romance, but I know that elsewhere that could be a point of tension.
At the pub, we get a couple of interesting details. So Rose is technically Janet's boss. Maybe that's me just like getting invested in the world building and where Rose is, but she's the boss in her office.
Is Rose everyone's boss then?
Well, no, Janet just introduces her as her boss. We see Bob have to talk to Mike, and so he has to like do the straight man talk. So they talk about the football, and I'm convinced Bob knows what he's talking about. And then as soon as Janet and Mike wander off, everyone's complaining, saying he's so out of her league. So it kind of makes you wonder, is Bob thinking, what were the girls saying about me behind my back when I wandered off?
Oh, yeah. And also they say that, like, sort of in 2 weeks, she's going to be crying at her desk again, which we saw in the first episode.
That's all I've got on Bob meeting Rose's friends, really.
Yeah, no, that is where the scene ends. You know, we go to a little discussion in the park between Rose and two of her co-workers. And then straight after that, we're straight into, like, kind of part two of this sequence, the kind of the mirror of this, which is...
Before we do that, I think this scene in the park is very important because it introduces the key theme of the episode, which is saying "I love you."
Oh, thank you.
Which is something obviously Queer as Folk touched on as well. Oh, you're very welcome, Lee. This is when you say it back.
Well, we'll get to that. It's, that's what the episode is about, that was...
Janet basically says to Rose that she, in all her youthful knowledge, thinks that Rose loves Bob, and she can see it all over his face. But the other co-worker, who we've seen before, I just can't remember what her name is. Anita, she basically says to Rose, you need to don't say anything, because as soon as you say it, he'll do a runner. Has this man ever been in a long-term relationship with a woman before? And Rose has to be like, well, no, he hasn't technically. And this other woman's like, there you go. Don't say I love you because you'll spoil it. You gotta see it all out. So that creates the main tension for Rose in this episode is she has these very strong feelings towards Bob, even though they've put labels on their relationship and they're telling people about it now. Does Bob feel the same way? Which is a normal tension in a relationship, but here it's made even more dramatic by the fact that obviously Bob is adamant that he's still gay, and obviously that's causing more conflict for Rose.
Now we get to the mirror to what we saw before, which is now Bob is introducing Rose to his friends. They're entering Canal Street. Immediately Holly comes up and is like, "Hi guys," and is very clingy, as we've come to expect. They get into the pub, and we're here with Bob's ex-boyfriend, who is acting pretty hostile towards Rose.
He makes fun of Rose's job, basically saying that she's practically a secretary.
And then Holly is like, "Oh, I wish I could type." And then Bob's like, "You can type." Dead.
Throughout the scene, you just get Holly inserting non sequiturs. She's the kind of person that I know a couple of people like this who always try and make every conversation about them.
Yes.
And always giving their 2 cents. And it's like, shut up. You're not part of this conversation.
I hate to be observed. They hate to be not observed.
Carl apparently works in animation.
He's a graphic designer and he's moving into animation at Granada Studios. And so she's like, "Oh, kids animation." And then he's like, no. And I'm like, what animation are Granada doing that isn't like CITV? Come on.
Well, because you think about how they have to animate the bits in between programs. That's what my mind went.
Oh, okay. That's less impressive than kids shows, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I kind of, if you were the person that does the indents between programs, I mean, everyone watches those. I said idents.
You said indents.
I'd like to see a recording of me mispronouncing that word.
Ask and you shall get.
You were the person that does the indents between programs. I still think that's pretty impressive.
No, but I think just being like really defensive about it not being kids stuff in comparison to that, I'm like, unless you're making like tentacle porn,
Yeah, it's a really awkward conversation.
Like he's making it awkward.
One of the tensions that's added is there's a moment where Rose gets to talk to Carl, who is the ex-boyfriend, alone. And she jokes about, I've never met a boyfriend's ex-boyfriend before. And he asks her about Bob. And Carl says that Bob used to say, "I love you" a lot, and that he was a very sentimental person, and he said it...
And he did it within 2 weeks.
Exactly, and that's only fanning the flames for Rose that have been originally sparked by Anita's comment. So this whole interaction between them at the table, very odd. And then they start talking about Deansgate, don't they?
Yes, and like, is it scary for a gay guy to go into a pub in Deansgate? And like, also they ask like, would you go into a pub in Deansgate? And Rose is like, yeah, but like, and he's like, not if you were like meeting friends. And I was like, well, no, I wouldn't, but it's complicated. I'm like, well, no, you wouldn't go in because why would you go into any pub by yourself? Like, I'm sorry.
People especially in the noughties.
Okay, no, I know people do. That's like your local pub.
Yeah, but some people might want to go into Deansgate,
Okay.
But no, there's a whole thing about it. Well, a woman wouldn't go into a pub because she's scared of men.
And like, was Bob scared that other night? And it's interesting because like that other night, it's sort of, there's a bit of awkwardness and there's a bit of suspicion, but everyone kind of keeps up appearances. And so ultimately it does go relatively well. But in the Canal Street pub, people aren't keeping up appearances. So there is more like open sort of hostility instead of passive aggression, as you might have seen. in Deansgate. So, I don't know. If it is dangerous, I'd need more evidence.
And in fact, there's evidence to the contrary, because Gino apparently copped off with a much older man with a mustache on Deansgate. So it can't be that scary.
Oh, yes. Apparently there are some straight passing people there who you can find. Called clones, which is a bit of gay slang for a gay person who dresses and presents himself as like working class. That's basically it. Yeah.
And Rose really puts her foot in it at this moment, because she says, I've never heard of them. They must have died out, as a joke. And then Carl just looks her dead in the eye and says, yeah, they did.
I did, yeah.
I interpreted that as a reference to AIDS.
Well, yeah,
Again, that shadow of AIDS. Rose is trying to make a joke and Carl's shooting it down and making it as dark as it possibly can be, really.
Yes, that's the Carl guarantee.
So, all in all, not a very successful meeting for Rose and Bob's friends. And then we cut to Bob and Rose that evening in bed. And
yeah, Bob is like, we could run away to the seaside or a small town, open a shop. And then he says we could open a local shop for local people. Do you get that reference, Zach?
No.
Good, because I do. And so we can mirror the fact that Rose doesn't get it, and she's like, is that a reference? Is that from something? She likes it when he makes references, even when she doesn't get it.
In fact, and she says, I love it when you quote things. And what's Bob's response to her using the L word? Set the alarm for 6:30. I've got to mark the assessments.
Oh, yeah.
So again, that tension is building for Rose.
But I must ask, Zach, what do you think when I reference stuff you don't get?
I think it shows you're a wide, consumed individual.
Yes, I'm dying of consumption.
The only thing I don't like is when you point out the fact that I don't get it.
Yeah, well, that is a reference to The League of Gentlemen, which was created by Mark Gatiss, Steve Pemberton, and Reece Shearsmith.
Yes, I do know what the League of Gentlemen is. Yes, I do.
Okay, good. It's just you didn't get that quote. It's like the most famous.
No, but I've never seen it.
Okay.
The funny thing there is Russell T Davies writing that quote in is quoting one of his friends, really, isn't he?
Yes. I guess
he was a good pal of Mark Gatiss in this era. I mean, he still is, I believe.
Anyway, the next morning, Carol comes out when she hears that Rose is leaving. She like runs out because she needs to. She wants to meet Bob. She wants to be like, "Hi, Bob," and like she gets to because it's Bob's car and he's driving. So Rose is like, drive off, and Bob is like, I'm not going to do that. So Carol gets to the car. Oh yeah, and like she asked Trevor, like, I need a line, I need something I can say that makes it feel like I had a reason to come out the house, and her thing is basically, do you have a pen? I can't find a pen. And Rose is immediately like, there's one next to the phone. Like, Rose is shutting her mother down. Real tension here. And Bob is being a lot more cordial, but like, she puts the window up as Carol is leaning on it. Very aggressive gesture there.
And what I find interesting about this scene is it's shot. So you have this shot from the car looking out at Carol, and Trevor lurks in the background of the shot outside the house, which is poignant because as the car drives off, the conversation topic turns to Trevor. Well, Bob asks Rose, is that what a porn baron looks like? Because he doesn't look like a porn baron. And Rose is adamant that that's what a porn baron looks like.
Yes.
Obviously, Rose has told Bob her suspicions regarding Trevor after a conversation with Dean in the last episode.
And her Columbo, evidence gathering reasoning of actually Columbo would show us Trevor printing off a porn in the first scene of the episode. But anyway, is that basically printing stuff off the internet is what Dean said, right?
Yeah.
The internet just means porn. If it's from the internet, it is porn. So he must be printing stuff from the internet. And also, why is there, so much of a cost of printing, all that stuff? She's piecing it together, and it looks like porn.
But they don't talk about porn for too long because we're off to go meet Bob's parents. Well, we've met them before, but it's time for Rose to properly meet them, and they have this really interesting conversation.
Yes,
where Rose says to Bob, "It's not just me meeting your parents; it's you coming out in reverse," which is an interesting twist on when you are gay and you're not out to your parents and you get a partner and that becomes then a reason to come out. Yeah, it's more than the meeting, it's coming out, but then this is that and then some. I think that's a really clever little observation. But when they turn up to Bob's parents' house, it's full of people, because it turns out that it's all the parents from the PAH, the Parents Against Homophobia, are there.
Pa! Because we say pa to all the haters and all the losers.
To all the fools, and as Monica, that's Bob's mum, says, all the homophobes. I just love that she's of the generation that says ho.
It's when two bigots sound alike.
So the place is full of people making signs. And so Bob and Rose go in, and Rose essentially, there's a moment where Bob's mum thinks that she must be a lesbian because Bob's brought her along as a friend.
And he says not yet.
They end up getting put to work because Monica's a bit busy to have a conversation. And Rose ends up meeting Bob's dad in the kitchen. And so she's making an effort to talk to him, and he's very disinterested. And she says, "Are you not proud of your son?" And he goes, "Well, there's a difference between being proud of your son and going out marching for him, if you know what I mean." So we get the confirmation, really. Bob's dad isn't exactly as thrilled about gay rights as Bob's mum is.
Yeah.
But we find out a little bit more about Bob's mum. As Bob gets chatting to some of the other mums.
Yes.
In there.
And they also have it out for Carol because they think, well, she always does the speeches. She's meeting all the politicians for lunches, kind of hogging the limelight of this organization. And
she's the president, but all she ever does is talk, and someone else needs to take over.
Yeah.
And at that moment, she's very bossily. She tells everyone to get into the garden to practice the arrowhead formation, because that's what she'd agreed with the police.
From here until the end of the episode, we hear more stuff about what the police have allowed them to do, and how because of how the demonstration area is sectioned off and stuff. It's sort of there's a lot of idea of doing it within police provisions. Some people would say that, what do you call a protest that hasn't been sanctioned by the police? A protest.
Yeah.
But she's really trying to do it within the law, and we'll see if she can keep it up until the end of the episode.
Bob and Rose are left alone inside, and Bob basically tells Rose that he can't do it, and he's sat at the kitchen table, and he tells Rose that that's where he came out in the first place, and how his mum cried, and her first thought was about grandchildren, which actually is, I think, in a lot of cases, exactly how it goes. And his dad didn't say anything about it for 2 years. So again, further confirmation of his dad's attitudes towards the scenario.
Crucially, he says that, we think that he can't come out to them now because everyone's here. There's so many people in the house. But he says that even if it was just them and there was no one else, it would still be too difficult. So now Rose is really in her mind about, should she say I love you? Should she not? And so she decides to visit Holly. And it's interesting how we're seeing quite a few moments where Rose actually seeks out Holly. She seeked out Holly in the restaurant bathroom, and now she's going to her flat. And this sort of thing of Holly is the stalker, but Rose is making the calls, which is interesting.
So she turns up at Holly's door whilst Holly is conditioning her hair in beer.
Do you think she's just drinking beer?
No, we see her. We see the shot of her.
Well, yeah, I know, but maybe she's just using conditioner. Is that actually a thing?
Yeah, no, people used to put beer in their hair to help make it wavy. Funnily enough, I was actually having dinner with an old family friend who said that that's what she used to do 30 years ago. And I just thought it was really funny to see it on screen. So it was a thing that people actually did.
Fair enough.
Now, this is where we kind of start to see Holly at her more vulnerable, because she is quite antagonistic to Rose. She doesn't open the door more than a crack, because
it's the chain thing.
Exactly. So she doesn't unchain the door, and she just has the conversation through the crack, where she says, "No, I meant for you to phone." Well, Rose says, "Well, I thought we could just have coffee. My kettle's broken," and Rose is like, "Well, okay, I'm not really fussed about coffee. I want to have a chat with you. Basically, I need to have a chat with you about Bob." At the same time, we see Bob go round to Carl's flat, and they have a bit of a heart-to-heart. And I think, should we talk about Bob's conversation first, because it's much smaller?
Yeah, let's do that. He's always... Still, he gets surprised that he has feelings for Rose. So he'll be downstairs and he'll think, oh my God, how is this happening? This is going to pass. This is never going to happen again. And then he goes upstairs and he sees Rose, and he feels that attraction that he has been feeling before, and it comes back, and he keeps sort of doubting himself, and even though this is real.
Now, the other side of that conflict that we saw about Rose not knowing if Bob loves her, because actually Carl asks, do you still love me? And Bob's kind of like, well, I love you in a way, but he doesn't know if he loves Rose. And then Carl basically paints his picture of, says, you know, I worry about Rose in this scenario because with women, with heterosexual women, there's something genetically programmed about them to want to settle down, to find a husband, to get a mortgage, to have kids.
Yes, he's saying that that's what he has to beware of now, you know.
Whereas with a gay man, no, it's all about fun and sex and doing what you want.
Yeah.
Without worrying about these responsibilities, and Bob's eyes have been thrust open, as it were.
Yeah.
So that's the conversation Bob has with Carl. Over at Holly's flat, she's finally let Rose in, and now it's the first time that we sort of get wider shots of, like last episode I called Holly's flat dingy with rubbish everywhere. Now we see the full extent.
No, yeah, you were able to spot that. I didn't pick up on that as much, maybe because of the kind of standard definition. It's funny that we call like older TV standard definition, even though at this point HD is standard.
No, it should be low definition, standard definition.
But it is low definition. You know, I could not make out that stuff. But now we can see, because we get like a close up of moss on her growing out of her windowsill.
Yeah.
There are like quite a few moments where Rose is like sitting down and she pulls like out like a frisbee or like some other stuff. And off screen on the way to the kitchen, Holly like falls over. We hear a crashing sound. Rose is like, you okay? It's like, yeah, I just fell over.
I get the impression that Holly probably doesn't use her kitchen that much. That's why there's probably stuff in the way. The thing about Rose finds a frisbee on the couch as she tries to sit down and goes, oh, do you play? And Holly just goes, no. Which confirms to me that Holly is a hoarder.
Yeah.
It's not just that she's messy.
That word was pinging around my skull too.
There is some sort of psychological scenario going on here that's causing her to cling to things and not tidy up.
Yes. Not long ago I watched a YouTube video about, well, it was about a few things and like sort of, and video games and all that stuff, but it ended with basically a discussion of hoarding and like how could we bear to throw anything away, and I was like, fuck. And what might cause hoarding, and sort of how trauma might cause hoarding. So
the conversation that Holly and Rose has is, Rose tries to confide in Holly because she's still not clocked that Holly's not the most truthful person, and basically says, with Bob, it's gay this, gay that, which means Rose can never sort of feel vulnerable or feel sorry for herself because Bob's the one that's got all the troubles in the world. And that makes Holly say that, well, Bob's a bit selfish. She kind of wants to lay seeds to tear them apart.
Yes.
And so Rose starts asking more questions, and Holly's basically saying, oh, well, I don't want to say anything because I wouldn't want anything to get back to Bob, and I wouldn't want when you guys break up. Not that I want you guys to break up, but if you guys, you know, if in the unlike scenario that you guys broke up, you know, I still want to be friends with Bob, you know, so I don't really want to say anything.
So like, this is girl talk. This doesn't leave, what is said here doesn't leave a room.
And then Holly, I mean, I only wrote down a couple of things. Holly says the most bizarre thing. She's a bit floundering in this conversation where she says, oh, well, I worry about, you know, disease, which was an odd move for her, referring to Bob.
We know what it's referring to, and to refer to, you know, a close friend of yours like that, fucking hell. Rose is like, he's tested. She's a bit like, what the fuck, Holly's.
Despite this, Rose continues to confide and basically says that she's fallen in love. And the moment is great because you hear Rose saying this out of vision as the camera pushes in on Holly's face.
Because she talks about how like she never expected to fall in love. You know, this is so crazy to her that she is in love. And we get the theme tune again, but we just get kind of a leitmotif. We just get like the xylophone melody there. And I like the sort of the emotion that makes you choke a bit is that theme. Actually, and Holly's response is to like burp. She's like, what?
Yeah.
Just cannot hold herself together. Yeah, and so Rose is wondering, should I tell Bob that I love him? And Rose is like, oh no, don't say that. And then she's like, no, you're right, And then she's like, oh, actually, I think you should say that, I think you absolutely... Because she's figuring out what would break them apart. Would it... Because Rose reckons that Bob is about not saying it. Bob is, like, pushing it all down. And so then Holly is like, well, you've got to say it. She's trying to figure out what would make them two repelling magnets. What would tear a divide between them. And she's calculating in real time, taking on new information to reformulate her strategy.
That's essentially the long and short of Holly and Rose's conversation there.
So now Bob and Rose are back together. They are in Carol's house and they're ready to do some bloody detective work.
Pawn hunters.
Yes, pawn hunters. So they're sort of looking around the place. They go into Rose's room and the bed is small and she says how it's like a childhood room and all that stuff.
And how Trevor's invaded their house,
Yes.
A great detail. They now use his cutlery for everything. He's taken over.
Yes.
And the most heinous crime possible, the TV's always showing sport, and he makes Carol turn Corrie off. And apparently she's been watching Corrie off all her life. And even worse than that, he turns the volume down on the ads, and Rose loves watching ads.
Yeah, I've got to side on Trevor on this one, I'm afraid, but I get it. He's brought in his routine. He's colonized the day-to-day living of everyone else in the house, and also when they're in Rose's room, as a bit of romance, she says that when Bob is in there, it doesn't feel so small.
Oh, it doesn't feel like a childhood room. Oh.
But anyway, back to the pawn hunt. They're in the attic, and eventually Bob does find the stuff, and so he's like, oh my god, this is bad. And so Rose is like, is it kids? It's like, worse. Is it dogs? Worse. Is it kids with dogs? There's only one thing worse than a rapist. Boom, a child.
And says no, and Bob's like, no, it's worse than that.
Yes.
It's James Bond. And Rose goes, what, he's having sex with James Bond? And Bob goes, no, it's worse. He is James Bond.
Yes. And also, so we should just stress here, this is not James Bond porn. This is literally just a James Bond fan magazine where he dresses up as James Bond and there's like a double-page spread of Judi Dench,
Which is almost, it sounds like it could be porn.
Yes.
And also, the name of the magazine is Bonded. So again, it sounds like, it could be porn.
Bondage is porn, but bonded is just... It's just turning a noun into a verb.
Okay.
It's,
Okay. Apparently he's like the M of something like the Manchester Bond Society or whatever.
Yes, the Manchester.
He really puts the M in Manchester. So they have a giggle about how funny it is, and they're reading the magazines. Ha 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 ha. But Rose is still adamant, because they've got the invoice, the printing invoice for the magazine. Rose still thinks there's something up with Trevor. This isn't the long and short of it. There must be something else. Because
she wants that evidence that she can like lay on Carol to end Trevor. She wants to sabotage him, and she realizes that this is not quite enough, actually, and more work is going to have to be done to take down Trevor. Just a quick aside. Do you think that it would be wise to show Trevor your hand at this point, to say, hey, to allude to the idea that you know about the James Bond magazine? Do you think that would be wise, Zach? Just hypothetically.
See, I don't know, because I'm not sure. Rose is still suspicious, but this almost would have deflated my suspicion to go, oh, there's nothing up with him. Maybe I should just tease him about it. That would be my psychology at this point.
Okay.
I don't think the stakes are that. I think it feels like if Rose hadn't made the astute observation about the price on the invoice, I would have thought the stakes would have lowered around Trevor, but seemingly not.
Anyway, that was completely unrelated to what happens next, because we cut to them at dinner with the family. Bob, when Trevor is discussing, I think sports, he says, oh, I prefer movies, action movies, James Bond, a really clunky way of bringing up James Bond. They shift the conversation onto James Bond so that they can discuss it with Trevor. Because if Trevor thinks they're onto him, then he's going to be more careful with whatever else he's hiding, you know?
But I mean, I don't think this can't possibly make him suspicious, because they're just chatting. He says, "Oh, I actually quite like James Bond." And so the great moment, Trevor asks Bob who your favourite Bond is. And Bob seems to know how to play Trevor. Now, I'm not a member of the James Bond fandom, so I don't know what the controversial takes are.
Yeah, no, me neither. Maybe he read the magazine to figure out the opinions on the different Bonds.
But when Bob says that Roger Moore is his favourite, Trevor's he's really quite taken aback and says, "Well, I'm much more of a Connery man, but each to their own. But I'm a bit taken aback about Moore."
Which is wild, because there's this idea that Roger Moore is nobody's favourite Bond. He is absolutely a lot of people's favourite Bond. A lot of people like Sean Connery because he was the first, and a lot of people like Roger Moore because he was also very prolific, and people like Pierce Brosnan because he's sexy, and people like Daniel Craig because his movies had a darker tone and whatever. The one that I would say is probably nobody's favourite is Timothy Dalton. Just personally, I don't see that being anyone's favourite. Maybe he is. I don't know. No shade to him. We love the Welsh Bond, But
well, he only did 2 Bond films, didn't he?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah. But Roger Moore did a lot of Bonds.
Yeah, he did.
Sure, there's real schlock, and if you listen to the podcast Kill James Bond, one of them talks about a recurring nightmare of reviewing some Roger Moore movie that they hadn't uncovered yet, and just taking bits from all the other movies and rearranging it a bit because the movies got so repetitive, and the idea that if they were stuck reviewing Roger Moore movies forever, then that would be their hell. But he's still a lot of people's favourites.
And apparently it's Bob's. At this point, Rose, I don't know why I think she's being quite, she's either testing the waters or being playful, and she says, "Well, I always thought Sean Connery is a bit gay."
I think she just says Bond in general.
Oh, Bond's a bit gay. No, Bond's a bit gay. And Trevor thinks this is utterly ridiculous, because there's no one more red-blooded and masculine than James Bond, apparently, and there's no way that Her Majesty would have a homosexual as a spy.
Yeah.
See what did you see what happened last time there were gay spies?
No, yes, he brings up Burgess and MacLeod, 2 gay members of the Cambridge Five. Granted, there were 3 other members who I'm guessing weren't gay, but still. The idea that, well, because of the Cambridge Five, you can't trust gays. So anyway, in other news, Trevor needs to die.
Trevor basically then turns to Dean as well and is like, "Oh, you don't think he's James Bond is bent, do you?" And Dean goes, No. So obviously, Dean is being trained to be a young homophobe.
Yes, no, absolutely. I wrote a little thing here, but basically, Dean has such a bad haircut. It's like a fringe, but you see the strands, but actually it's not, you don't see the individual strands, you see the little clumps of hair sort of stuck together, and I'm just wondering who came up with that idea. I just want to talk, but it's such an unfortunate haircut. I'm sorry, but not even why, how,
I don't know who did the hair and makeup, if anyone did do the hair and makeup on the show.
We just want to talk.
Yeah, so after dinner, after this interaction, Rose does end up apologising for starting that conversation by saying that Bond is gay, and actually she thinks Bob should be able to shout his identity from the rooftops. And then she says to him, "I love you."
Yes, she declares it. It's
a big moment. That she decides, I'm not going to listen to what anyone else is going to say.
Well, she listened to Holly, but
she listened to Holly, but she won't listen to Anita's. Bob's response to "I love you." Okay. And he gets in his car and drives away.
So Zach, what are your thoughts on the premature "I love you"? If the clocks aren't synchronized on that front,
Is it premature?
I don't know. It might not be, actually, because they have been seeing each other a little bit now,
Is it premature because Bob hasn't said it back? Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, between them, it's sort of different times. Yeah. Have you ever had to respond to a premature "I love you"?
No. No, I haven't, I'm afraid.
I have.
Oh dear.
I'll just say it back. I'm sure I'll love you at some point. It's fine.
Oh, Louis. Oh,
I don't like that.
Because I see stuff like this and I'm like, I don't want to have to deal with that, you know.
When in Heartstopper season 2, there's a whole premature "I love you" storyline. I didn't like that, to be honest with you. Hot take.
That is a hot take. I thought that storyline was fine.
Anyway, this is not a Heartstopper podcast. I will hold on to my opinions there. Where does Bob drive off to in his car?
He drives to his parents' house because he's decided...
He does.
You know what? I got to tell them about Rose. It's such an awkward scene, and he does feel kind of awkward about it because, you know, as you said, like the way he came out and like how that went down and how like now, you know, about 10 years later, sort of where his parents are with sort of gay support and all that stuff. Now he has to say that, yeah, I'm seeing Rose, but I think I'm still gay. The father's reaction is, you know, well, you know, I mean, that's wonderful. And like, he's immediately on defensive. He's immediately like, don't be too glad. And I wonder, like, do you think the father is glad for the wrong reason? Or do you think he's just saying that because he wants to be supportive?
No, I genuinely think he thinks, as Bob suggests, that Bob has come out of the phase, he's finally grown up and is now going to settle down with a woman like he's supposed to. And I think Bob's dad is going, oh, thank fuck for that. He's finally seen some sense.
Yes.
Bob's mum is shaken to her core because everything she's ever stood for in life has come crumbling down in front of her.
Well, actually, she tries to build it back up again because she says, hey, you know, the charter is LGB, you know, bisexual is fine, it's wonderful, we're standing up for that too. And he's like, and then he says about how, no, he's still gay, but now there's Rose.
Exactly.
Because I think I've been a bit more skeptical of the whole gay, not bisexual thing than you. I think you've been more receptive of that. And I think this is a point where I kind of realise that, like, actually, yeah, he is still gay. I think something about how he kind of spoke in this scene, I realised, like, no, you know what? No, Bob is still gay, and this hasn't sort of changed that. And I kind of got that. And I realised that, like, yeah, this is that kind of surprising, like, progressive kind of anti-labels.
Yeah.
There's even a moment where in the gay bar where, like, someone asked Bob, did you tell, you know, Rose's friends that, like, you're gay or you were gay or whatever? And he says, oh, no, because, you know, I want them to meet me first and we'll do the labels later. And it's like, I think this episode, I really kind of get the message of this TV show, because it's taken a while to sort of build it up and try and put it through different interactions and scenarios. And I think I'm really on board. I'm really solid. I'm really on board with the anti-label kind of ethos of this show, and I love it.
Woohoo! You're sold.
Woohoo.
We can stop watching now. No, we can't stop watching. This is too compelling. And then the moment kind of gets punctured as Bob goes, wait, are you two staying in separate bedrooms? Because how come Mum didn't know that Dad was, if he was asleep or awake?
Yes, when he arrived at the house, he asked his dad awake, and she's like, I don't know, yeah.
Anyway, we cut to the weekend for the day of the big rally. Bob's picking Holly up for the rally. She's got a massive sign that says straight mate on. That's STR8M8.
Yes, love to see it.
And we get a little sense that he still doesn't know if he wants his relationship with Rose to last. And then she phones him up when he's picking Holly up and says that she loves him.
And she says, I mean what I said last night. I'm sorry if it's a bit inconvenient for you to hear it, but, you know, tough, you're hearing it. She realises, no, actually, what I said was good and necessary, and it wasn't a mistake. You know, it'll be Bob's mistake if this ends things.
Bob doesn't say it back again this time, and he basically says, well, I'm off to the rally with Holly, so he puts the phone down. And Holly, after waiting awkwardly in the background during this phone call.
Well, Rose is like, ooh, I should come. But he's like, oh, no, don't worry. There's going to be 2,000 people there.
Yeah, don't come. You'll get a bit lost. Bob ends up talking to Holly about the phone call he's just had. And Holly is back on her lying shit and basically says, oh, yes, Rose came to me and she's really starting to plan ahead, you know. She's starting to think about children and mortgage and moving in. Bob's going, really? And she says, well, she didn't quite say it in those words, but yeah. So there's a bit of anxiety for Bob there. And they turn up to the rally. And are there 2,000 people there, Louis?
No. That would be far too much budget to expel on this. No, there's just a few people, and you know they've got their placards and they're ready to go, but there's not a lot. There is a stage and a sound system though.
I think it was filmed in the centre of Manchester because Russell T Davies writes a little bit in the writer's tale about the day of filming of this bit of scening. Of this scene.
Well, because I think this scene might be the most famous scene from the show.
Yes, I think so.
Because it's the one scene I knew about before watching this. So I think I heard it about it in a Rowan Ellis video essay. So shout out to her.
It's a really underwhelming turnout. We see Carl's there with his parents. Bob's mum goes up onto the stage and she gets ready to give her speech. And there's something in her mind that's unsettled her about when Bob told her that he had a girlfriend. And she says this really powerful statement where if she didn't have a gay son, she would probably drive straight past this little parade and laugh at them.
And that would be wrong.
In
that sense, she sort of realises that, like, basically, actually, you know, she's stepping down as president, but what we're doing here is actually really good. But also, we're not changing anything. We're just coming here and saying we're upset and then going home.
She says the work that they're doing there is really, really good. And as long as it reaches just one person, their job has been done. But then she says, we've got support from Graham Norton. We've got support from Dermot O'Leary. We've got support from the cast of Brookside. And if you don't know, that was a popular soap. It basically got cancelled 2 years after Bob and Rose was broadcast.
I think I've heard that like Hollyoaks was sort of a spiritual successor, had a lot of similar people working on it. So like they have similar vibes basically.
Yeah.
So think Hollyoaks basically.
One of my lecturers was the producer of Brookside.
Wow.
Funnily enough. And he told me some funny stories about Brookside. Maybe I'll share them some other time. And then Bob's mum makes the massive, shocking announcement that she's standing down as president. And all the other mums are like, oh, that's great, we'll get some fresh blood. But then she says, we're not good enough. And then she points at a bus, doesn't she, Louis?
Yes. She points at a bus and she says, you know, that bus, TBC Bus Company, which I must point out is not a real bus company.
They couldn't slander a bus company.
No. But this fictional bus company, she says TBC Bus Company is owned by a guy who donates to homophobic legislation. But of course, we all get on the bus, or like, would you, knowing that, miss your bus? If it's raining, if you're carrying loads of stuff, no, you just give them your money and get on. I love this, bringing up this idea of basically sort of boycotting things is hard. And like people talk about how like boycotts don't work. And one of the reasons is that like it can be hard to, you know, say I'm not going to use something if it's something like a bus. Like, oh yeah, I'm not going to buy this one brand of slightly pricey chocolate. Like, sure, fine, whether there are other brands of slightly pricey chocolate, whatever. But like when it's things like buses and those kind of services which are much more essential, it is hard to boycott things. And I like that a TV show is having a bit of a discussion about that.
This speech was very reminiscent of the years and years speech about self-checkouts I found in terms of Russell T Davies writing. It sort of reminded me of that speech.
Yeah, and also one thing I thought of that popped into my head was the Bristol bus boycott, which was in protest of racism, and that's actually a boycott that did work very well. So I don't know, they are possible, but like also they are difficult. And so then she decides, no, you know what? We're not going to be boxed in by the police, which, you know, had been alluded to this whole episode, the idea of a protest existing within a police regulation boundary or whatever. She's like, no, we're breaking out of this and we're going to stop that bus. And everyone's like, because she kind of galvanized the crowd, they're all like cheering and clapping. And she's like, no, don't clap. Run out there. I think she says to like a drag queen, "Beautiful creature, stop that bus." And a drag queen runs out. It's very dramatic. We keep cutting to like Bob and Holly looking, and then cut back to running, and then they're looking straight ahead, and then they're looking to the side as the queen runs past. It's quite, I don't know, comical. And then she like runs into the road and she's like stopping the bus. But this is the thing, is the bus, from how it's filmed, it looks like it's going pretty damn fast before it brakes, and so it doesn't look like it has enough time to brake.
Yeah.
But I think the footage must have been sped up slightly because it brakes really quickly, and I thought that maybe the episode was going to take a very dark turn.
I thought we were about to see some roadkill drag queen, which would not have been a nice way to end the episode.
No, literally, I thought that like it was going to be like Monica's gone too far, and there's going to be some real fallout from this, because Monica does become the Joker baby. Like she snaps fully when she's talking about buses. One of her detractors in the organization is like, "Oh, where are pills?" And another one's like, "Shut up, because no, she's speaking the truth. She's preaching." But the bus stops, and so Monica runs to the bus and she handcuffs herself to the bus, and that bus is not moving. That bus is not moving.
Bob sees all of this, and his first instinct is to get his phone out, to phone Rose and basically say, "I love you too, and I'm not changing. I'm not changing for you. I'm still gay, but then on top of all of that, there's you." It was such a nice moment where he realizes that he's proud of who he is and is able to realize, actually, no, I do love Rose, and all the anxiety. I think this moment shows that he had a lot of anxieties about his identity, how his mother would perceive him, how his friends would perceive him. And actually, he sees his mother continue to fight in what she believes in. So he's able to just come straight out of it. And then he puts the phone down, he runs over to his mother, takes off his belt, and sort of ties himself to his mother's handcuffs.
It was way too, I don't know, like loose, like he could get pulled away from the bus by a cop.
Yeah.
Monica is actually handcuffed, so she is actually stuck to that bus.
And then the final scene of the episode, I love this. It's so funny. Rose is at her house with her family, and she's discussing, what should we get? What takeaway should we get for dinner tonight? Should we get an Indian? Should we get a pizza? And all of a sudden, there's a news flash. Well, no, they're watching the news. And then Dean Gads says, "Oi, that's Sir." And it's Bob and his mum on the telly. Louis, I'll let you do the quote. What does Bob's mum say?
"I love my son, a gay man with a straight girlfriend, and that's equality." And they see that on the TV.
Rose's reaction is to go, "Ooh.
Or Chinese. We could have Chinese." End credits. Very abrupt, yeah. Well, actually, not quite as abrupt as the first episode, but I think it's sort of... There was a bit of a cut to black for a second before the credits came, so I don't know. I always love to note down the final words. Or Chinese, we could have Chinese.
I love that ending.
Now, before we finish this, I just want to... There was some quotes I wasn't able to slip into my commentary, but I think they're such great non sequiturs anyway that I just want to say them now.
Absolutely.
In the car, when talking about Trevor and why he owes so much money to someone, Bob is asking, well, he was fined how much? And then Rose is like, "Well, that's a question." And she stumbles over her words a little bit. And for me, it was giving Mark Ruffalo and Poor Things. I thought that slight stumble. I feel like people are doing that now because it's funny and it's kind of naturalistic. But I was surprised to see that in a TV show in dialogue. In the attic, talking about Trevor and how basically him and Carol have a joint bank account, and so if they can access each other's money, that would be a problem, because what if Trevor takes all of Carol's money? And Bob says, "I thought she was penniless." And then Rose is like, "She's got my pennies." Trevor says about when they're going to get married, but it'll be 5 months to the day since we met. I'm like, so what? So it's less than 5 months now since you met. That is mad. That is way too short. Oh my God. When stopping the bus, the drag queen says, "You shall not pass." So that is why this is the most quotable episode for me. There are so many amazing lines and little non sequiturs in here.
And that's That's Bob and Rose episode 4.
I must say, because I only knew about the scene where she says, "I love my son who is a gay man with a straight girlfriend," I thought that would come at the end of episode 6. I thought that would be the climax of the show. But actually, no, we've got 2 more episodes left. That was just Monica's little arc of accepting her son. We don't know how it's going to go down with everyone else still. But it's great to see that she's so proud of him.
We've still got conflict with Holly, and we still have the hook of what's Rose's family, what's their reaction going to be?
What's up with Trevor? The mystery of Trevor is not fully solved.
And will Dean get a haircut?
Good question.
Good question indeed.
Can't wait to find out.
All questions that we'll find out in the next episode of the Davies on Davies podcast.
So you can follow us on Instagram at Davis on Davis. You can follow me on Instagram, Louis on Air, Twitter, Louis on the Air. Join us in 2 weeks. Now, Zach, do you have anything to promote?
Oh, you said promote. I thought you were going to say plug. You ruined it.
Okay, do you have anything to plug then?
I do. My fridge. I left it unplugged and all my food's gone warm.
Oh, God. Yeah, you should get on that.
That's it from me.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.